like to see these 5 things in Football Manager 2020, the next version. And welcome everybody to the top 5 features that I wish FM 2020 will include. Let's get right into it. The first feature I would like FM 20 to have is set pieces. Well, I should probably not say new feature, but a complete revamp of the existing feature. And I would even be happy if they don't really completely revamp it, okay? If they just add a few things. Listen, I love FM since basically it came out in the 90s, 1993 or whatever that was. And yes, I'm that old, but set pieces are just so bad. I mean, currently we only have this: 2 scenarios and 2 locations, and a few routines and some player instructions. I mean, it's so basic. And what I would like instead of this, of only having scenarios and locations, is to have more stuff here, add more stuff. So to make it even simpler, if it's a word for SI, I would just like to have more of this. So scenarios, locations, and then moments, with the ball and without the ball, and then steps, so that we can direct the team on each moment to do certain things. For example, the first step would be that both our wingers would run to the wings. And then the second step would be for our playmaker to come here and get the ball from the wings. And then the third step would be the striker to run behind the defense and for the playmaker to put the ball directly to him. Something simple as that. So what that would mean is that we'd have the scenario, location, the moment, and the steps, and under the player instructions we would also have ball movement instructions, something like that, where we would select, for example, instead of saying edge of the area, the ball movement instruction would say place the ball on the wings, and this would be under whichever step there was. Does it make sense? To me, adding moments, steps, and I'm calling it ball movement options, would enhance this whole experience. It doesn't have to be specific either. It doesn't have to be put the ball exactly on this player at this moment. No, just generic, like in the tactic screen where you say run wide or stay inside or pass direct. That's it. That's just it. And I'm just talking about the defense, but imagine the options we have at attack. If you notice, when we are in the attacking options, the guy actually taking the corner or the free kick has not specific instructions about movement, but about where the ball should be placed. And this is what I mean by the steps. So we'd have the first step where I want the ball to be short, and then we'd have the second step where I want the ball to come to the guy outside of the box. And then I have the third step where I want the ball to go somewhere else. And not only the ball movement, but the player movement. And that's why I'm suggesting, I would really hope as I would see this, where we'd have player instructions and ball passing instructions, something like that, where we could direct both the movement and the ball, where the ball would go. I really think with these simple additions to the existing set piece, or a complete revamp, but following the same logic, it would enhance our experience so much as managers, as virtual managers, because modern football is all about set pieces. The second thing I want to see is improved transfer offers. What I mean by this is that, let's go to my shortlist real quick. Let's see one of the top players I want to buy. Let's see this guy. Italian, I'm managing an Italian team, so I want to buy him. And his first team is not even a key player, okay? And he's valued at 3.6 million, right? So if he's valued at 3.6 million, I would expect that the club to accept an offer around his market value, or even slightly higher. They don't want to sell it, and if they don't want to sell it, then they just reject, or I wouldn't even have an option. Or maybe I do have an option just to have a chance to, maybe destabilize the player and stuff like that, so that's fine. But when I do this, suggest terms, it goes to 64, which is the release clause. I think this is too big of a gap. I don't think this should be it. If the AI manages to reach this value, I think it should be reflected on the market value. Then this guy, who seems to be awesome, 90, my scouts say that is a 90 value, whatever this is, it should be reflected on his market value. And I think not having that, it just makes it weird. Sometimes I find these players are very cheap, and then this happens, that they want 64 million, but if the market value is 3 million, this doesn't make sense. I would go maybe 4 or 5 times limit somehow. You know, like if this market value is 3.6, then first I think it's wrong. This kid, look at him, he should be worth much more. I wouldn't say 64, but I would probably put him in the 20 millions, because he's going to be awesome. So I think probably the biggest issue is the actual value presented here on the transfer value on this item. I don't know what to call it. So I think if they improve this, I would be very happy, because there's a lot of players here that are very cheap. You know, look, recommended rating is just amazing, and they're all very cheap. But in actual fact, they are not as cheap as they appear here. So this would be something I really would like to see improved. The third thing I would like to see improved in Football Manager 2020 is something I'm calling visual correlation. If you look at the left hand side, there's a lot of things that will influence the player performance. And now what I'd like to see is, for example, in these youngsters with a lot of potential, I want to know if my facilities, the training schedule itself, or the staff, or the playtime are influencing his progression. So I would like to know it. Why some players achieve their full potential and others don't? There are a few hidden statistics that influence that. We don't know the potential ability, the actual professionalism and ambition. There's a bunch of details that we don't see, and even the star rating is an estimate based on what our coach thinks or our scout thinks these players can evolve. But I would like to know, and this is realistic I think, to know how my club as a whole is affecting his ability. For example, let's say that a youngster of his characteristics needs, I don't know, to play one game or 90 minutes every month, or whatever rating or statistic would influence this. And do you have a visual indicator here? Like we have with these rings, for example, that is almost at optimal usage. Let's say playtime, for example, that if playtime is 90 minutes, so by having a ring, for example, here about playtime, I would know, okay, for his development, I'm almost doing well as a manager, so I'm almost giving all the playtime he needs to develop. And this would change based on his characteristics, obviously. So if he's a very determined guy, he maybe doesn't need as much playtime. But if he's not so determined, so he's a bit weak in his personality, maybe he needs more playtime to get more confident. So if he's not so self-confident, etc. And the same for training. So if my training facilities and stuff is not as good, so I would have a ring here that would maybe be at 50%, because my facilities are only adequate and my coach staff is not that good. Does it make sense? Having a visual indication here of all the areas that are correlated with the player's development, it would be so cool, because that would kind of force me or give me a motivation to actually pursue these areas, because I don't like to micromanage. I think if you micromanage all the areas, the training, the staff, if you select every single one of them and you spend hours and hours and hours looking to this, maybe this is not needed. I delegate everything to others except the choice of my assistant manager, because I delegate most of things to my assistant manager. So having something like this, but even more simplified at the player level, so that I can understand that this guy is progressing well, so these green arrows are due to facilities or staff or whatever, this would be very useful for me, because I spend maybe 90% of my time on the tactics screen and the other 10% on the So that's all I care about, buying good players and making sure I have a great tactic. Everything else I delegate. By having this visual correlation of the different areas of the game and its impact on the player performance, that would motivate me to actually click more often in these tabs and actually try to tweak these things, because I would feel compelled to do so, because I have a visual indication that this player who has awesome ability is not actually going to achieve that unless I do something about it, and that would be cool and would add depth to the game. The fourth improvement I would really like to see is to have job offers that would offer a project. What I mean by this is, I think about clubs like Man City or even Bayern Munich. I don't know if you remember when Guardiola was hired to Bayern Munich, was to dominate Europe, not to win internal competition. So that was the project, and the project was to win, let's say, one Champions League in those 3 years that he had. Or for example, Manchester City, the project of Manchester City is making Manchester City from going from an average team to dominating with Europe, for example, and you would have, let's say, 5 years to do that. That would be awesome, because I find that when you reach the top in the game, there's nothing else to do. Like, let's say I'm very fortunate and I take Sampdoria to the top, right? Then nobody tries to contact me. I don't know if it happens the same with you guys, but I probably it does, that you are like the best manager in the world and nobody's interested in you. And there will be clubs, like new rich clubs like Man City or PSG or whatever, that want to achieve, they have a project where it will take X amount of years to achieve that goal. It would be nice to be hired under that premise. And when we would go to some place like the board, for example, we would have kind of a project, a status, where we would kind of understand if we are aligned to that project or not. So we have competitions, match, club structure, etc, 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 and we would have a club project. And within the club project, I don't know if we click here, yeah, so within the club project we would have also different areas, whatever the project would be, instead of this, which is kind of a year-to-year analysis, if it makes sense. So that's what I would like to have, is projects like we had in the previous Football Manager, the challenges, like prevent the team from being relegated or try to be unbeaten for a season or whatever, but a bit more project-oriented challenges, where we have a project maybe to grab a team from the second division. Let's say I'm managing Barcelona, right? And I won the Champions League and I win everything. I'm like the top manager in the world. And then the second division team is like, listen, we want you to take us to the next level. I know this is not a common occurrence. It's more common average teams like Man City, before obviously they were bought by those rich dudes, to go to the top managers and try to seduce them to grab the team. That's what I would like to do, so we'd have a challenge, if it makes sense. Because reaching the top, then it gets boring, and then what I do is I resign and I search for another club, but I don't know what's the project for that club. I would even be happy for something like this. We have all this information about the job opportunity, right? So job status, we have all this information, and there would be another piece of information saying current project. The club is aiming to be this, or the current president or the board is trying to make the club. Then I would apply for that job. Like, wow, these guys are in, let's say, second division or whatever, but they want to be back to the main team of their country or whatever, something more appealing than just job status available or unavailable, and also something less boring than, if we are winning a lot and we are already in the top club, nobody will try to come and offer us some challenges. The fifth and final improvement I would really like to see is linked with the previous one, where we have a project and we try to develop a club. I would like to visually see, and this is, I guess, mostly visually see. It's probably not the best sentence I've ever mentioned, but anyway, what I wanted to have is some visual perception of the improvement that I'm having with the club. You see all these facilities here, for example, a corporate training, data, youth, stadium, that we have, like, instead of just text, that we have some like squares around here, rectangles or whatever, with a picture of the current facilities. That would be so cool, because let's say that, linking with my previous improvement wish, that we are offered a project to basically renew the whole club. This rich guy took care of a club in, let's say, the second division, and doing a parenthesis here, yeah, I think I need to manage a second division club. I think I'm craving for that. But going back on topic, if that project appeared and we offer a job, we would then come and check the club, and we see, like, visually see with some pictures that, oh look, these facilities are not good, they are like very bad and old, they're not maintained at all, something like that. And then every time the club progressed, we would see the influence we had in that area, because we would see a better image related to the training facilities, for example. I'm not sure I'm articulating this well. What I want as a manager, or one of the things I really like, and I think most people like, is to grab a club that's not doing very well and then make it great, right? Visual aid would be the step one for this fifth improvement, but I wouldn't want it to be just purely cosmetic. What I would like is that, as part of this, one of the strategies would be, how do we manage the budget? So let's say we have under facilities that we have 5 facilities, 1, 2, 3, 4, plus the stadium, 5. So we would tell the board, or at least influence the board, if that was the project of the board, that they would hire us to improve the club. They would ask us, of these 5 areas, amongst others, but let's use this as an example, of these 5 facilities, which one do you want us to focus on as a priority? And let's say we like to, buy young players and develop them, so we will say, invest in the youth facilities. You have these 5 things, invest in the youth facilities. Let's focus about the corporate facilities later, or whatever. Does it make sense? I don't think I'm articulating this very well. Hopefully it will make sense to you. And this linking with the project improvement that I would like to have, plus the link with the facilities and the visual aid to really get more immersed in the game, that would be awesome. I can just imagine, again, a second division club that had very crappy facilities, very bad everything, and we would visually see how bad it was, and then we would steer the board, because they would ask us under board requests or whatever, they would ask us which of these 3 or 4 or 5 you would want to focus on, rather than me going there and tell them, oh, improve this or improve that. They would come to me as part of the project and say, hey, Efflux, we have these 3 things here, we are definitely going to invest in something, which do you want us to invest? And this would influence as well the transfer budget, because if we want them to invest in youth facilities, for example, they would tell us, okay, we can do that, but we need to cut the transfer budget or the wage budget in 10%. And I think the project related with this higher interaction and visual stimulus of the progress of the club would make these challenges very, very interesting. And there we go, guys, my top 5 improvement wish list for the upcoming Football Manager 2020 game. I really hope you've enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with me, or if you would like to see other stuff. I'd really like to know. And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe, because I will be uploading more stuff. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again, hopefully very, very soon. Bye.